Hey everybody, it's Dan. Welcome back and welcome to this now third video that's going to be taking a look at Forgotten Chapters transfers. These two new sheets from their Agincourt line were sent to me by Forgotten Chapters to take a look at with you guys, so huge thanks to them for kicking this over to us so that we can review them together. And on that note, if you've not seen the first two videos that I've put out, I'll have links down in the description. They were kind of like high-level overviews of a pretty extensive collection of their catalog, bunch of different transfer sheets. We showed off how easy I feel they are to use, did some applications over different color schemes to show off as a kind of stress test how opaque and vibrant that I feel they are. So if you're looking for that kind of like high-level, broad overview of their range, again, links are down in the description. I recommend you check those two videos out because this video, by contrast, I really want to have focus exclusively on their medieval transfers. Because the truth is, I think for those that are aware of Forgotten Chapters, probably know them for their sci-fi transfers, and they have a really fantastic and growing range of medieval transfers, including these two new Agincourt sheets, that are worth checking out. And I fear a lot of people just don't know they exist, so I wanted to make this video focusing on them exclusively. So the flow of this video is that we're going to look at these sheets in detail up close, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to use them in a unit of mounted sergeants in my medieval army. But before we do that, I think that this might be kind of overwhelming to those who aren't quite sure what we're looking at here. So in order to demonstrate why I feel this is such a good thing from a layout standpoint, I think the best way for me to do that is to explain the main issue that exists with their top competition on the market, which is, I feel, Little Big Men Studios. So Little Big Men Studios, if you're not familiar, is now owned by Victrix, and they have a pretty large range of medieval and dark age transfers that are really beautiful. They make very high quality transfers from a print standpoint. Everything looks fantastic. The issue I have with them is twofold. It's with versatility and ease of application. And to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about, these transfers are made specifically for their medieval mounted knights. And again, they're beautiful transfers, but they are only to go with their medieval mounted knights, and specifically the shields that come with the medieval mounted knights, because you can see they are tailor fit to each particular shield. So in my own case, because I'm typically bringing in different miniatures from different manufacturers, or at least kit bashing shields between manufacturers in order to add some more variety to my units, what that means is I'm going to have a really hard time using these transfers, because you can see that with the exception of just like a handful that will line up with, in this case, these Wargames Atlantic shields, I'm going to have a difficult time lining any of these up. And the other issue I have is that even if you do have the correct shield to go with these transfers, is the way you apply these is you flip them over and apply water to the back over a white shield. And so if you don't line that up perfectly, you're going to have a little lip of white around the outside of the shield. So the advantage of the Forgotten Chapters transfers, by contrast, is that because it's just the motif, it means that I can use this motif on a whole host of different shields, right? I can use Fireforge shields, Conquest Games shields, Victrix shields, Wargames Atlantic shields like we see here, Games Workshop shields. It doesn't matter as long as the motif will fit on the shield that you're trying to apply it to. And you can see that gives me a lot more flexibility in terms of which shield I'm applying it to. But you might have also noticed that because there's no background color included here, it means that I can choose my own background color, even if that might just mean like a slightly different hue of the same color, right? I can choose like a darker red for one miniature, lighter red for another. So it gives me a lot more flexibility in terms of how to paint the army. So that's why you see so many motifs crammed on here, because that's what it's affording us, is the ability to kind of pick and choose which shields we want to apply these motifs to and which background color we want to apply them to. So I'm also going to show you here that Forgotten Chapters on their website includes mock-ups of each of these designs as they could be used on shields, which is a really nice way of demonstrating not only how many of each design is intended to go with a particular shield, but also background colors. If you find it kind of overwhelming just looking at a wall of motifs on a transfer sheet, this is a very nice guide or template that you could use. Of course, you still could use your own background color if that's something you wanted to do. That's probably what I'll end up doing with mine. But as I said, this is a helpful way to organize all of the designs that are on those transfer sheets. You may also see peeking up at the top there, it states that there are enough designs, and it maths out to do a full set of barding and a shield for each of these designs, which is pretty incredible. So with all of that said, let's take a look at these transfer sheets up close here. Again, this is one of their first of their Agincourt line. And you can see, as I just mentioned, that you have enough of these motifs to do a shield and barding for every single design. So that means, by my math, 40 knights from one set of transfers. And you can see that the orientation of the motif or the charge is correct, right? That the right side and the left side, or I guess the right side and the left side, depending on which way you want it to be oriented, is correct for all of these different designs. So it gives you so much, not only variety, versatility, but value. Again, sorry to throw my sales hat on there, but there's just the number of transfers that you get for your money here is astounding. Again, these are the two new Agincourt sheets. I think they look fantastic, and these are the ones I'm going to be leaning on for this project that I'm going to be doing. But they also have a couple of sheets that we've looked at before. These are their Crusader orders, which look great. And then they have a couple of different variants of, these are English leopards, that they come in gold and yellow. You can see the yellow over on the right hand side there, which also look great. We have a bunch of different fleur-de-lis options, which you can see are in gold, silver, blue, and yellow, right? And then they also have an Imperial Eagle option. So lots to play with. As I said, I have a little project I want to use these Agincourt transfers on, which I think will help me demonstrate all of the claims that I'm making here about how useful these are. So let me cut now. Let me show off this shield project that I've got and show you how great these transfers are. All right, here we go. So I've got a unit of 12 Wargaming Atlantic mounted sergeants that I need to paint up. So I've got a medley of different shield sizes glued down just to bits of sprue there. And you can see that I've picked out 5 colors, just white, black, and then the 3 primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. And that's going to create a nice, safe mixture of background colors from a heraldry standpoint. And from a ratio standpoint, I'm doing half of these in white because there's a lot of nice colorful motifs or charges that I can apply to those neutral white shields. And then a mix of yellow, red, and blue and black for the other 6. So just going through doing 2 thin coats of this here, and then once that's dried, you're ready to apply transfers. So if you've never done this before, all you're going to do is take a pair of scissors. I just have a cheap pair of hobby scissors that I'm using here, and you're going to cut out the transfer that you want. These are already pre-cut transfers, so you don't have to worry about getting like right up on the edge of whatever it is that you're trying to get off of the transfer sheet. Again, it's already cut right around the outside of the motif. You're going to dip it in water for about 15 seconds, just clean water. And then you can see here I'm using a brush to just slide it off of the transfer sheet. I have a technique where I kind of am simultaneously pushing with the brush and pulling with the transfer sheet in some cases, especially for larger transfers, that helps. And then if it's already dropped into the right spot, you're golden, just let it dry. However, if you need to manipulate it a little bit, maybe it's too low or too high on the shield, you can add a little bit more water to activate it, and then it'll slide around on the shield. And then you can, of course, do the opposite, which is wick water away with your brush in order to get it to stay in place wherever it is that you want it to be. So using that technique, you can see here I'm going through and knocking out all 12 of these shields. I think it only took me like 30 minutes. And even for some of these fiddly transfers or more fiddly transfers like these trumpets, there are some stars that I use later on. They really weren't any issue at all because, as I said, they're already pre-cut transfers, so I don't have to worry about like cutting right up onto the transfer sheet itself. And they were very easy to manipulate once on the shield, just either by adding or removing water, depending on what it is I wanted to do. Pay particular attention here with these close-up shots to how opaque these transfers are, that like even that yellow flower over a black background, or those black vines over a yellow background, you can see just, you don't see any of the background color coming through. They're nice, crisp, bright transfers, and I don't think that can be overstated. So here they are all done. You could theoretically be finished here, but I do recommend you at least use a matte varnish over any transfers, just because they have a little bit of a shine to them. And so I usually do 2 coats of it, but I also want to do some weathering. So I'm going through and doing the first coat now, and that will seal in the transfer, make sure that they don't reactivate, and remove some of the shine. And then once that matte varnish is dry, that doesn't take long, I'm going to come through and do a little bit of weathering. And the first step that I do is kind of these scuff marks, and I'm using a dry brush here just with some Rhinox hide or dryad bark, I can't remember which. But I would recommend use a sponge, like just those sponges that come in blister packs if you've got any of that laying around, but in a pinch, a dry brush will work just fine. And just kind of twist the brush as you go if you're doing this method. And you don't want to be too heavy-handed with it. It just creates a nice little, again, scuffed effect, because it's going to have like an irregular pattern to it. And then I take a liner brush and I'm going to do little like sword strikes, I think is what I'm trying to represent here, using Nuln oil is what I typically use here as a slightly different consistency, as a shade or a wash versus the Rhinox hide. And then I'm taking my base color, that is the base that I'm using on the figures, and I am taking some watered down version of that color and applying it to the bottom of the shield here, and you can see it's quite watered down, like probably more than 50-50. And once that dries, I'm going to take my dry brush and take undiluted paint, and I'm going to basically like stipple the bottom of it. And that combination of the watered down layer and the stippling layer creates a pretty cool like mottled dirt effect on the bottom of the shield, I have found. So just going through and knocking all of these out. And then once that's done, once I've finished all the weathering, I can then go through and do another coat of matte varnish, and then these are essentially ready to snip off and apply to the models. You could, of course, paint these straight on the models. That's what I typically do, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I just put them on sprues. But once you're done, you can snip them off, glue them to your figures, as I've done here, and here are my finished results, which I think look fantastic. Really happy with how these turned out. The transfers, I think, elevate the figures a lot. They're beautiful and very easy to use, and they're just great value. I mean, I've got dozens and dozens of transfers left over that I can use throughout the rest of my medieval army. I could probably do it for multiple medieval armies with how many I have, so really recommend you give these a look if this is something you've not dealt with before and is something that interests you. I've got a link down in the description to their web store, and also a discount code, which is going to be down in the description as well. It's good for 15% off your order through the end of June. So if this is something that intrigues you, it's never a better time than now to check them out. So huge thanks again to Forgotten Chapters for sending these over to us. Another beautiful set of transfers from you guys. Excited to use these on some more projects of ours, and I'm also excited to see what you guys have coming down the pipeline in the future. So as ever, I appreciate all of you for dropping by for this one in the meantime, and until next time, happy gaming.